You may notice that both our seats don't look quite stock. They aren't. This is an ostrich Corbin. This is an ostrich Corbin, and mine's a cowhide. We got this for real cheap. It was a steal, couldn't turn it down before Devin bought the bike. When my oldest son still owned this bike. So I'm titling this, you want to own an Excelsior Henderson, or you already own one, you don't know a lot about it, you like the looks of it, or you find them interesting and stuff, and I'm trying to get on the internet sources for people that don't know about us as a community. There's a ton of information out there, you just gotta look in the right places. So I'm doing this on YouTube because YouTube doesn't really have much on there other than the fact that there's a few owners on there showing off their bikes, which is fine. I have no problem with that if you want to show it off there. They're a magnificent machine, that's for sure. So that's what this is about, this episode. Hopefully it's going to be a lot of words, and hopefully I'm not going to get long-winded with you guys and bore you to tears and all that fun stuff. This is my bike, 525. It's got 40,000 miles on it, and after owning it for 20-some years, I've got tunes, oil, cool, fan assist, pickup tube. All right, rear hub. This is one of the last things I had done on my bike. I hadn't had a hub fail until like 3 years ago. The rear hub and the front hub, for that matter, are both made of aluminum. And it's pretty soft aluminum, and any torque or stress on that hub is going to move it around, or as I use the word, knurling. So there's a bearing over here, and then there's a bearing over here. It's a standard bearing. I'd give you the numbers, but I'm not going to go look for it up. And that's the belt side. You can see that red ring on my bike. That's where the belt is. Under torque, when you get on it, it pulls stress on this bushing, and the aluminum actually will bend away and be a problem. Our fix as a community is to machine that out where that bearing seats, machine it out, press in a sleeve, a steel sleeve on both sides, and then run two bearings on the belt side and one bearing on the other side. That took care of that problem. No more issues with the bearings going bad. I have pulled two rear wheels off and to check the bearings, and had the bearing fall out onto the ground. So it's a real deal. You need to know about that. Tunes. Oh, let's back up. Air idle control. On the side of the throttle body, back here is an air idle control. We've ran out of them. So there's a method on keeping yours alive for a while. I don't know very many at all that have actually died. They just get dirty and they fail or don't work as well as they should. There's a process you can go through of cleaning it up with brake cleaner, card cleaner, whatever you want to use. You just clean it up and put it back together, maybe lube part of the moving pieces in there or whatever. That's an issue though, you need to know about it. That's not a true update, it's just something to be aware of. Pickup tube. Down here in the primary case is where the oil sits on the kickstand. Got it on the kickstand, bike leans this way, and all the oil sits down here inside the primary, not in the cavities underneath the engine case. There's two cavities, one for the transmission, one for the engine. That's where the actual oil pumps pick up at. Way back at the very beginning, one of the owners and past vendors, Bobby, X-Man Baldwin, and maybe other people, Bobby, I remember seeing this video, noted that our bikes suck air when they're warming up on the kickstand. They sit on the kickstand, they're on this side, and you do not have an oil pickup tube. It's going to suck air while it's warming up. I personally don't warm up my bike. I just ride it nicely until it's warmed up, and I'm not even going to go in that argument. I don't care. But if you're going to warm it up the kickstand, you better make sure you got an oil pickup tube. That oil pickup tube will be right here, and hopefully your owner, that's some paperwork says that he's got one. Oil cooler. These bikes run naturally hot. When they built these bikes, the tune had to meet California's EPA, and because of the California EPA, they ran them very, very lean. And because they ran lean, they run very hot. This is the oil cooler, the one that's most available out there right now. It's the East Coast cooler, I think they call it. Jamie and Marty came up with it when they were up and running. Look at all that red dust. It works great. This is the fan behind it. It sucks air through it. I put this shroud on here. Man, it's got quite a ding on it. I'll have to repaint that. This shroud, I call it my bikini shroud. I don't like the looks of the oil cooler. And when my oil cooler was standing out there shining all the time, the first thing people would ask me, what the heck's that thing on the front of your bike? Instead of looking at the wonderful fender or the tank or the springer or whatever, they were looking at that oil cooler. So I covered it up and disguised it with my bikini shroud. And it works really well, it looks nice, and it still cools. Before that, our bikes were running very, very hot. They were running, I've heard guys shot temperatures as high as 275 degrees without the oil coolers. And the tune. The tune is, we'll get into that. 275 degrees, your oil can't take that and it starts breaking down. Perfect operating temperature for your oil in your motor is 235 degrees. I don't care if it's a car or truck or whatever. 235 degrees is where it's made to operate, or less. It can't go any over that and it starts breaking down. Our bikes were breaking down oil really quick. I've heard of guys changing their oil 2 to 3 times during season, riding season. And at AMSOIL or Mobil One or whatever, that gets really expensive really fast. So keep that in mind. You do want an oil cooler. The other part you want that relates to the oil cooler is you want a tune. We've got, I think, 4 or 5 tunes out there for the bikes. All of them for the benefit of the bike. All of them for the benefit of cooling the bike down. In other words, most of the tunes run the bike significantly richer. You don't, for whatever reasons, I haven't lost any mileage once I got the latest tune in it. And put the tune in, the bike runs richer. Because our bikes were
black
hot
smoke, don't think like that, Rich, or you're tweaking the carburetors and stuff. It's nothing like that. It just runs richer
we
and
were
runs
going through
cooler because
stators pretty frequent because of the oil cooler.
it also
I would
helps.
say
So
about 1,600 miles together. The bikes run very
region,
normal, run great temperatures.
about all
and,
you could get out of them normally.
That's what you need to know. 1,600 miles, and then you have to buy a stator at $100, and it was almost expected. It got that bad. But once we got the engines cooled down with that oil cooler and the tune, we quit losing stators near as much. Now, we had a kind of a rash of stators going here in the last year or two at a couple of different events, but these bikes were high mileage bikes, and I think that's probably why they were exposed to high heat early on when we still didn't have the heat under control. And they survived that, and then eventually they just failed because they got old with heat exposure early on in the game. That's my guess. It doesn't matter. That small rash of stators breaking down, it's not around anymore, so it's not a big deal. Ground strap. Alrighty. Grab my light. Right down under here, if you follow this little wire down under here, this by chance, just let you know, that is not a real oil tank. That is your electric box cover. Or as guys in the community like myself call it, we call them the Fox oil tank. It looks like an oil tank. It's supposed to look like an oil tank. It is not an oil tank. It's where your solenoids are and several relays are and grounding and all that stuff. Down under here, right onto the case, the engine case, right down there, is a bolt that runs into the engine case, and it's the main ground. They run several, or they ran two, I believe, small gauge copper wires down there for ground to ground the whole machine. And because the motor is mounted in rubber on the motor mounts, there's some loss of resistance there, or gain of resistance there. These bikes aren't grounded enough. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of bikes burn to the ground, the new ones and stuff, but there was one or two for sure that I know of that did really happen. One right here in Nebraska, lost ground and found it through the throttle cables underneath the tank, and that bike burned to the ground. We're not going to talk about that so much, but the fact is these bikes do need a good ground. And so what I do, and guys have come up with their own fixes also, but we're all very similar what we got going, as I ground the chassis right here. Let me grab my light. Ground the chassis, and then we ground to the starter. And then that one back here with the two smaller gauge copper wires, I run a heavy gauge like this one, just like this one, from from one of the relays. It's the main starting relay, can't remember what to call it, and I run it to that ground. Also, a problem with the grounds is a lot of the bolts that went into the case with the grounds was Loctited with orange Loctite, and Loctite doesn't carry electricity very well. Light bars. My bike doesn't have a light bar. I kind of like them. I don't own one, but I wouldn't mind having one. They're a little bit pricey. A lot of the accessories for our bikes are a little bit pricey, especially if it's a new one, and they still got new ones out there. I'm sure you all know what light bars are, or road bars are. They got a light on each side of the headlight. They came out of the factory miswired for whatever reason. I don't know. Somebody was assembling them, didn't know what they were doing, or wasn't trained right, or it doesn't matter. You need to know that if you get a light bar off eBay or from somebody, you may want to check before you get it on there and smoke your wiring or blow a fuse, that it may have to be rewired. It's not difficult. It's not difficult at all, but you need to know that. Also, the light bars I've been around, most of them have a small bend in them. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how it came out of the factory, and everybody was okay with it. And being that it's chrome moly, I think the steel is chrome moly, and then it's chromed over, it's really hard metal. But note that when you buy it, that there's a small tweak in it on your throttle side of the bike, your right side of the bike. There's going to be a little bit of a tweak in it that you can try to bend if you want. I tried once and I gave up. One of the guys that brought their bikes here didn't like it, wanted to know if I'd fix it, and I couldn't, not without damaging it, so I quit.